Okay, welcome to the first ever science fiction podcast. We're going to talk about the movie Cyborg Cop, but we're going to talk about all three of them today. And apparently, Cyborg Cop is one of the B-class science fiction novels that kind of ever existed. And I kind of really thought the first two were good. I haven't seen the third one yet. But between both the movies and the third one, which I haven't seen, I'm hoping to watch it sometime, is where would it differ? Where would it take? That's going to be the issue with it. The problem would be with Cyborg Cop is that all three are low budget films. And when it comes to Cyborg Cop, you think that no matter what, you're going to have any type of snag with the actual thing. Like I said, this first episode, I want to talk about Cyborg Cop with anything else in between. You have to really think about what they're doing, how they're going to do it. But all the actors that played in Cyborg Cop 1 and 2, which I watched, they're pretty decent. And although it was not intentional where it would be of anything else. And this episode's going to be a little bit like a 13-minute video, maybe a 14-minute video, talking about all three Cyborg Cop movies. But if this one goes well, I'll make a longer video and go from there. But to knowing that Cyborg Cop didn't make it into the sci-fi top 10 charts of all time, like Chernobyl and a couple other science fictions, like American Cyborg, they didn't make it there, but they dropped the scale in the science fiction novel, but it just didn't reach sci-fi's pinnacle of learning, I think, to where, yeah, there is going to be some issues with science fiction films, and Cyborg Cop, from all three of them being one of them, now they're being recognized to where, yeah, Cyborg Cop is now being recognized in TV, but it never received sci-fi rating. Even if it's a sci-fi movie, a sci-fi film. There's not many people that do science fiction movies, but it's a low budget film. Sci-fi does do low budget films. For the most part, they do low budget films for the most part, and it's like you can't really understand what they do with the series. Now, if they take it off like a RoboCop or something like that, yeah, I could see it being almost like a copyright issue. But with Cyborg Cop, almost like RoboCop apparently, but it's a cop destroying cyborgs. Even the first one was basically against his brother. But it's like you think that RoboCop and Cyborg Cop would be copyright issues. They're two different companies, two different narratives. But between that and the Vince post, you can't really deny that, where it's like, yeah, there is some similarity to it, but usually bad guys creating cyborgs to control crime. That's basically what the whole aspect of the movies are. And when I think about the movie Cyborg Cop, you can't really understand. It's like from taking one thing to another with the aspect ratio of it. It's like you can't really make any reference to any cyborg movie when it takes to it. Now, if you look at Screamers, the movie Screamers, that's based on a cyborg type of thing with the third model. The third model would be a human cyborg competing with a screamer. You have to really think. But when you take it from RoboCop, from American Cyborg, that's taking it a little bit step too far. But Cyborg Cop really put it out as the main pinnacle. I know they made three of them, but they're low budget films, and apparently they were not as good as RoboCop as as a couple other science fiction movies that are based on like Terminator. I mean, James Cameron's Terminator. You know, you can't really deny that to where it's like, yeah, it's going to be like Terminator. They can't do it that way. And I think the director that created Cyborg Cop was driven to make science fiction films like that. But I heard it was a real low budget film, about 20 million to make the cyborg, to make how they were making cyborgs, you know. And the first cyborg was pretty good. I mean, it was like, but when it comes to the second one, it was kind of weird because the cyborgs become obsolete to where they use a criminal mind to make a cyborg out of the criminal, even if the criminal was on death row, you know. And it was like the third one, like I said, I haven't seen yet. I'm thinking about watching it sometime. But it's like you gotta really think that the tough thing is with this one, you can't really deny what it is and expect the unexpected. You have to really think on scenario wise for a period of time when they do the cyborg makeup. And apparently it's like cheap makeup, you know, it's B class type of makeup. Because you're working on a low budget film like Cyborg Cop. And when you look on a low budget film like this, I mean, they're all three low budget films because they were tight on it. The problem would be more of what it was, but yeah, there is a certain idea to that where, yeah, they do something with that. You got to really think on narratives. And when you look at all three movies, you think about it. I heard they were going to make a fourth one, but they blew the budget on all three of them, and all three were good hits. I just haven't watched the third one yet, and the second one from the first one were pretty good. To a certain degree, they were pretty good as of late. I mean, you have to really think that, yeah, Cyborg Cop was on the map, apparently as a B-class film. But you gotta really think of a certain idea of what they did with the makeup, how to make the cyborg, how to look at as cyborg. You know, it's like you gotta really think on where they differ on the aspect ratio of the cyborg. You know, when you look at cyborg films, doesn't matter if it's from Star Trek, First Contact, which you fight against the Borg, they're fighting against humanity, they're trying to fight against humanity, and they think humanity should be obsolete. It's one race, one gender, as the Borg in Star Trek. And the Borg believe, and they don't know where the Borg come from. They were created by man, but then became self-aware in the Star Trek series. I mean, if you look at the Borg, they were created by man, and all of a sudden, one man, the Borg, decide to go ahead and clone themselves, redo it, but they think humans were obsolete. So what they do was try to create the look of the cyborg in Star Trek, especially in First Contact, the movie. And Cyborg Cop is a second model version of that. I mean, it did put a lot. I mean, there was a lot of Cyborg Cop. Well, there's a lot of cyborg movies back in the 90s. You gotta think American Cyborg Cop, which is barely known. And you think, I mean, Cyborg 1 and 2, one was Van Damme, the other one was with another character. And you look at cyborg movies today, they don't look like what they did back in the day in the 90s or early 80s. The 90s was the golden era of science fiction, and it was good enough to put cyborg movies on the map. And it's like you gotta really think on how they differ from each cyborg movie, from Star Trek, Cyborg Cop, American Cyborg, Steel Warrior, Cyborg itself, Cyborg 2. You know, you gotta really think on how they're made. With the director being on a low budget film and all that, you gotta really think. And the one thing I like about cyborg movies is how they vary on certain occasions to where, yeah, they do pretty good with the actual filming, the actual makeup of the cyborg. You gotta really think. And I remember watching Face Off about, I don't know, about almost 2 seasons ago. They were trying to make a cyborg look, see how they could make a cyborg custom. I mean, it was pretty good, but the two were average. And I didn't like the judge's review on the one actor that was doing the cyborg coding. But there was one thing I don't agree with what they do. I mean, the judging was kind of monotonous, so to speak, when it came to it. If I rewatched that, and I disagreed with some of the judges' ruling when it came to the cyborg look, and it was like, why? Why would you judge makeup on this one character just because it looks bad? And I don't think the judges in Face Off knowing what they were talking about. I don't think they know what they're talking about. I mean, they're fence makeups. They're very good makeup artists. Don't get me wrong, they're very good. But that's one tip of the iceberg. You gotta really look at creation of how the cyborg is made. Now, when it comes to Cyborg Cop with B-class sci-fi film like this, you gotta really think that they put forth the effort on making the cyborg. They really did. They totally made the effort to the cyborg. And you're talking about back in the 90s. Now you see filmmakers trying to make cyborg movies today, and they're not standing up to what they did back in the 90s. It was something that they did. Or something back in the 80s with $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman. You gotta really think of what they're doing. You have to really wonder, how can cyborg movies still hold up today from the original ones? I mean, yeah, $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, they are cybernetic, but they're human in a way, but they're half cyborg. You gotta really think on certain ideas to that. To the most part, you gotta really think. For the most part, you gotta really look at where they lie in cyborg makeup. And that's one thing that can be misled. But you gotta really think on certain ideas on wavelength. But when they did Cyborg Cop, it was pretty good. And for the most part, it was pretty awesome how they did it. To the most part, they did do a little bad with the makeup at the beginning, but they got it so well back then. It was something they did very often. So, with this first episode, I wanted to talk about Cyborg Cop because it was an easier film. It was not that bad of a film for a short film. But it was awesome. It was awesome what they did to the makeup. But that's all I wanted to really do for today, is talk about this film for the most part. And just going with the flow on this one. But if you guys like this first episode, let me know in the comments down below. I'll make a longer episode next time around. And I gotta figure out what I can do for the next episode. So until next time, John Vic signing off the Science Fiction Podcast. Take care, and the first episode's in the books. See you later. I'm out here. Bye.